When I turned 28, my brother called me a failure. He told me I would never amount to anything. But he had no idea what I was about to do. You see, he always had the better job, the better house, and the better life. Or at least that's what he wanted everyone to believe. But that day, when he mocked me in front of the family, something inside me snapped. I couldn't keep being his punching bag. I spent years struggling with the idea of success, always comparing myself to him, always falling short. But that day, I realized that my worth wasn't defined by his opinion. I was going to show him, in the most dramatic way possible, that he was wrong. I started looking into every opportunity, every investment, and every company that I could possibly buy. And then, one day, I found the one that would change everything. The company he worked for. I'd spent years looking up to my brother, wanting to follow in his footsteps, but after everything he'd said, I realized that it was time to take my own path. I worked relentlessly for the next year, pulling every string I could find, learning every detail about the company. The market was tough, but I didn't let that deter me. I was determined. And finally, I did it. I bought the company. The very company where my brother worked, the one he had always bragged about. At first, I kept it a secret. I wanted to savor the moment, to see the look on his face when he found out. The next time we met, I could barely contain my excitement. "So, how's work going?" I asked casually. He shrugged. Same old," he said, his confidence still intact. But I could see the doubt in his eyes. He had no idea what was coming. A week later, I called him. "You busy?" I asked. "No, just the usual," he replied. "Why?" I smiled to myself. "Well, I just wanted to let you know that I'm your new boss." The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. I could hear the shock in his breath, but I didn't say another word. I hung up. I knew it was time to let him figure it out on his own. When we met the next day, his face was pale. "You bought the company?" he asked, his voice shaking. I nodded. "Yeah, and I'm not done yet. I'll show you what success really looks like." That day, I knew my life had changed forever. No longer would I let him define me. I wasn't a failure. I was a success, and I had the company to prove it. It had been a week since I made the call to my brother. The silence on the other end of the phone lingered long after I hung up. I knew he wouldn't expect it, but I also knew he wouldn't believe it until it hit him in the face. The idea of owning the company he worked for was surreal, but it was also my reality now. My hands shook as I sat at my desk, staring at the documents in front of me. I had done it. I had actually bought the company. I could feel the weight of what I had accomplished settling in, but there was no time to dwell on the achievement. I had a plan, and I was just getting started. A few days later, I stepped into the office for the first time as the new CEO. The company was massive, with hundreds of employees, and the air felt thick with tension. Everyone knew me as the outsider, the one who had never been in the business world before. I could see the skepticism in their eyes as I walked through the halls, but I didn't let it faze me. This was my time. My brother had underestimated me, and now I was going to show him and everyone else that I was capable of much more than they ever thought. The first meeting I held was with the board of directors. I walked in confidently, despite the small pit in my stomach. I could feel the eyes of the room on me, judging me, waiting for me to falter. But I wasn't about to give them the satisfaction. I sat at the head of the table and introduced myself. "I know I may not have the experience you all were expecting, but what I do have is the determination to succeed. I will not let this company fail, and I will prove to each and every one of you that I am the right person for the job." There was a long pause as the board members exchanged glances. Finally, one of them spoke up. "We'll see." It was a challenge, but it only fueled my fire. I didn't respond. Instead, I nodded, made my way to the door, and walked out of the room, my head held high. Every step I took in this company was a reminder of how far I had come. I wasn't the failure they all thought I was, and I wasn't going to let anyone, especially not my brother, dictate who I could become. Later that day, I received a message from him. "I heard you bought the company," he wrote. "You think you're better than me now?" My heart raced as I read the words. The sting of his judgment was sharp, but I wasn't about to let it affect me. I took a deep breath, sat back in my chair, and typed my response. "I don't think I'm better than you, David. I just think I'm better for this company. And that's something you'll have to accept." I hit send and leaned back, feeling a sense of calm wash over me. I had taken control of my life, and there was no going back. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, strategy sessions, and late nights at the office. But through it all, I felt more alive than I ever had before. I had a purpose, and I was proving myself every day. The company began to thrive under my leadership, and I started making changes that would set it up for long-term success. I wasn't just running the company. I was building it from the ground up. Then, one afternoon, my brother walked into my office. His face was pale, his posture rigid. "I didn't think you'd actually pull this off," he said, his voice low. "I was wrong about you." I stood up and walked over to him, offering him a firm handshake. "You were wrong about a lot of things, David," I said calmly. "But it's never too late to admit when you're wrong." The tension in the room was thick, but there was something else now: respect. He might not have believed in me at first, but now, he was seeing the real me. And that was enough. The days that followed were a blur of progress and hard work. Every morning, I woke up before dawn, ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. I had a vision for the company, one that would not only bring it success, but also prove to everyone who doubted me that I was more than capable of leading this organization. My brother, David, had underestimated me, and now I was showing him just how wrong he was. As the weeks passed, the changes I implemented began to take effect. The employees, who once looked at me with suspicion and doubt, started to believe in the direction I was taking. I was no longer the little sister who had always been in his shadow. I was their boss, and I was making things happen. It wasn't always easy, though. There were days when the weight of the responsibility felt too heavy. I missed the comfort of the life I had before, the days when I wasn't the one everyone looked to for answers. But I couldn't afford to let that hold me back. I had to push through. I had to prove to myself that I could do this. And slowly, the company began to turn around. Profits started to rise, and the atmosphere in the office shifted. People were excited about the future. They saw the changes I was making, and they saw my dedication. One afternoon, I was sitting in my office, reviewing a report, when the door opened. I looked up to find David standing there, looking nervous. His usual confidence was nowhere to be found. "I didn't think you could do it," he said, his voice almost apologetic. "But I see now that I was wrong." I leaned back in my chair, studying him for a moment. He had always been the golden child, the one everyone thought would succeed. And now, here he was, admitting that he had underestimated me. It felt good, but there was something more important than his apology. It was the realization that I had done this for myself, not for his approval. "It's okay," I said, my voice calm. "I wasn't doing this for you. I was doing it for me." His face softened, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of respect in his eyes. But there was no time to dwell on that. I had worked too hard to get here. I wasn't going to let my success be defined by his acknowledgement. The next few months were a whirlwind of growth and transformation. The company was thriving under my leadership, and I was proving that I had what it took to succeed. But even as I celebrated the milestones, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. I had proven to everyone else that I could do it, but now I needed to prove it to myself. I had to keep pushing, keep growing, keep building something that would last. And so I did. Every day, I worked harder, learned more, and pushed myself to be better. I wasn't just building a company. I was building my own legacy, one that no one could ever take away from me. The months passed, and the company grew stronger with each decision I made. The strategies I put in place were paying off, and every time I walked through the office, I could see the pride in the employees' eyes. They weren't just working for a paycheck anymore. They were working for something bigger, something meaningful. But with success came new challenges. Competitors began to notice the changes in the company. They saw us as a threat. And my brother David? He started showing up more often, wanting to talk, wanting to know how I was doing it. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was personal. He came to my office one afternoon, his usual cocky demeanor replaced with something more subdued. "I've been watching you, Sophia," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "You've turned this place around. I was wrong to ever doubt you." The words weren't easy for him to say, but I could hear the sincerity in his voice. I didn't respond right away. Part of me wanted to hold on to the anger, the hurt that had built up over the years. But I knew this moment was more important than anything petty. "You're not the only one who's been wrong, David," I said quietly. "I used to think that if I proved myself, if I showed everyone I could do it, then I'd finally be seen. But I realized something along the way." He raised an eyebrow, waiting for me to continue. "It's not about proving anything to anyone. It's about doing it for myself. And that's the difference. I didn't need anyone's approval. Not yours. Not anyone's. His eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite place. Maybe regret, maybe respect. I see that now, he said softly, nodding slowly. You're not just my little sister anymore. You've become something else. Something I can't ignore. I smiled, but it wasn't a smile of victory. It was a smile of peace. I wasn't doing this for validation anymore. I was doing it because I had a purpose. And now, for the first time, I felt like I was truly living that purpose. As the company continued to grow, I began to focus on long-term goals. I started investing in new projects, expanding our reach, and thinking about the future. I knew that what I had built was just the beginning. But the most important part wasn't the money or the recognition. It was the knowledge that I had created something that would last. Something that would outlive all the doubts, all the struggles, and all the negativity. It wasn't just about the company anymore. It was about me and the person I had become. I had taken control of my life, and no one, no matter how close they were, could take that away from me. The road hadn't been easy. There were moments when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I was doing the right thing. But those moments passed, and in their place came a strength I didn't know I had. And now, as I looked at the company, the people who believed in me, and the life I had built, I realized something else. I wasn't just the CEO. I was the one who had turned her dreams into reality. And that was worth more than any validation anyone could give me. It had been 6 months since I took control of the company, and the weight of leadership had become second nature to me. But something was different now. The challenges had become more complex, the stakes higher. I was no longer just proving myself to others. I was proving it to myself every single day. My brother, David, had come around, but not in the way I expected. He had started respecting me, acknowledging my success, but I knew deep down that he still saw me as the little sister who once needed his help. I had moved beyond that. I wasn't waiting for anyone's approval anymore. I was in charge, and I was going to keep pushing forward. The company's growth was steady, but the competition was fierce. I had to be sharp, constantly thinking 2 steps ahead. One morning, I woke up to an email that made my heart skip a beat. It was a proposal from a rival company, offering to buy us out. They had done their research, and they knew exactly how valuable we were. My first reaction was panic. It wasn't because I doubted my ability to continue running the company. It was because I knew this was a test of everything I had built. I spent the entire day reading through the proposal, consulting with my advisors, and weighing the pros and cons. The money was tempting. It would set me up for life, no worries, no struggles. But that wasn't the point. The point was proving that I could make it on my own terms. That I could build something from the ground up and keep it thriving without anyone else's interference. As the sun began to set that evening, I sat at my desk, feeling the weight of the decision. I called in my senior team for a meeting. They knew me well enough by now to see the concern on my face. This is a big decision, I said, looking around the table. We have an offer to sell the company, but I'm not sure it's the right choice for us. The room fell silent. Everyone was looking to me for guidance, and I could feel the pressure. After a moment, I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the skyline. The city below seemed so small, so distant. But my dreams, my future, they were right here. And I wasn't ready to give them up. We built this company from nothing, I said, turning back to face the room. We've worked too hard to let someone else take it away from us. We're not selling. We're going to keep going, keep growing. There was a moment of silence, and then the room erupted into applause. I could see the relief in their eyes, the belief in me shining through. And in that moment, I knew I had made the right choice. But the journey wasn't over. The next day, I called the rival company and politely declined their offer. I wasn't in this for the quick win. I was in this for the long haul. As the weeks passed, the company continued to grow. We expanded into new markets, launched new products, and strengthened our brand. Every step we took was a step towards securing our place in the industry. I had learned so much over the past year, but the most important lesson was this. Success doesn't come from shortcuts or easy wins. It comes from hard work, determination, and the willingness to make tough decisions, even when they're not popular. And in that moment, I realized that I was no longer just leading a company. I was building a legacy that would last long after I was gone. The weeks that followed were filled with more growth and even greater challenges. The company was becoming a force to be reckoned with, but I knew we still had a long way to go. There were moments when the pressure felt suffocating, and I questioned whether I could keep up the pace. But every time that thought crept into my mind, I reminded myself why I had started this journey. I wasn't just building a business. I was building my future. I was doing this for me. One afternoon, I sat in my office, reviewing the quarterly report. The numbers were impressive, but something was missing. I wasn't satisfied. The company had achieved financial success, but there was no real soul to it. I needed to make a mark, something that would set us apart from the competition. I called in my team and shared my thoughts. We've done well, but I don't want to just be another successful company, I said. I want us to be a company that makes a difference, that impacts people's lives in a meaningful way. The room was silent at first, but then one of my senior managers spoke up. We've been so focused on the bottom line that we haven't really thought about how we can give back, she said. It was a simple statement, but it sparked something inside of me. Giving back. That was what I was missing. We had the resources, we had the influence. It was time to do something bigger. Over the next few weeks, we launched a new initiative aimed at giving back to the community. We partnered with local organizations, donated a portion of our profits to charity, and created a program to mentor young entrepreneurs. It wasn't just about making money anymore. It was about making a difference. The response was overwhelming, not just from the community, but from our employees. They were excited about the direction we were heading. They felt proud to work for a company that cared about something more than just profits. The culture inside the company started to shift. People were more motivated, more engaged. They knew that their work was having a positive impact. And as the company's reputation grew, so did our success. Our clients saw the value in what we were doing, and they wanted to be a part of it. I started getting calls from other business owners, asking how they could implement similar programs in their own companies. It felt good. It felt right. As I looked around my office one evening, the weight of everything I had built hit me all at once. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was about creating something meaningful that would last. I had gone from a woman with a dream to a woman who had built something that had the power to change lives. And that was worth more than any amount of money. David had once called me a failure, but now, I was the one who had turned everything around. I was the one who had built something that people could be proud of. And in that moment, I realized that the true measure of success wasn't in how much money I made, but in how much I had given back. It was a feeling that money could never buy. As the company continued to grow, I found myself constantly pushing the boundaries of what we could achieve. Every new success was a reminder that I had the power to shape my own destiny. But with that power came new challenges. The market was becoming more competitive, and there were days when I felt the weight of it all. I had come so far, but I knew I had to keep moving forward. I couldn't afford to rest. One evening, as I sat at my desk, reviewing the latest numbers, I got a call from an unexpected source. It was David. His voice sounded different, not the confident, self-assured tone I was used to hearing, but one filled with uncertainty. "Sophia," he said, "I need your help." For a moment, I was speechless. David, the same brother who had doubted me, the one who had tried to keep me down, was now asking for my help. I had to swallow my pride. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to mask the disbelief in my voice. He told me that the company he had worked for was in trouble. The financials were a mess, and they were facing a potential bankruptcy. He had tried everything to save it, but nothing was working. The first thought that crossed my mind was to say no. After all, he had been so dismissive of me in the past, but then I remembered everything I had worked for. I wasn't the same person I used to be. I was strong, capable, and in control. And if I could turn around my own company, then maybe, just maybe, I could help him too. "I'll help," I said, my voice steady. "But on one condition." He hesitated. "What's that?" "You have to let me take over," I said firmly. "No more trying to do everything on your own. You need a fresh perspective, someone who isn't emotionally tied to the company like you are." He was quiet for a moment before he agreed. "Okay," he said, sounding defeated. "If you think you can save it, then I'm willing to try." The next few days were a blur of meetings and phone calls. I dove into the company's financials, uncovered the root of the problems, and started putting together a plan to restructure the business. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was no stranger to hard work. As the weeks passed, I saw changes. Slowly but surely, the company started to recover. The employees were more motivated, the numbers were starting to look better, and I could sense a shift in the atmosphere. David had started to step back, allowing me to take charge, and I could see the relief on his face. But there was something else. A quiet admiration. He was starting to realize that I wasn't just his little sister anymore. I was a leader, and I had the ability to make the tough decisions. Then, one day, after a particularly successful board meeting, David walked into my office. He closed the door behind him and sat down. "I owe you an apology," he said, looking me in the eye for the first time in years. "I never believed in you. I thought you would fail, just like I thought the company would. But you've proved me wrong. You're not just strong. You're better than I ever imagined." I felt a mix of emotions, pride, relief, but also something deeper, a sense of closure. I had spent years trying to prove myself to him, to everyone. And now, in that one moment, I realized I didn't need anyone's validation. I had already achieved what I set out to do. "It's okay, David," I said softly. "I didn't do this for you. I did it for me. And for everyone who believed in me, even when you didn't." There was silence between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that comes with understanding, with respect. I knew that, for the first time, David truly saw me as his equal. And that was all I needed. As the months went by, the company was not just recovering, it was flourishing. I had built something that was sustainable, a business that people were proud to be a part of. I had earned my place in the industry, and it felt incredible to see everything I had worked so hard for finally paying off. But there was a shift in the air. I could feel it, even before David mentioned it. I had become more than just a CEO. I had become a leader in the eyes of those around me, and it was something I wasn't sure I was ready for. Every time I walked through the office, I could see it, the admiration, the respect. It was what I had wanted for so long, but now that it was here, I wasn't sure what to do with it. I had spent so many years doubting myself, thinking I wasn't good enough, and now, people were looking to me for guidance. The pressure was different. It wasn't just about proving myself anymore. It was about living up to the expectations I had set. One morning, as I was walking into the office, I noticed the tension in the air. My senior manager, the one who had been with me from the start, was waiting for me. There was a look on her face that I couldn't quite place. "Sophia," she began, "I think it's time we had a serious conversation." I could tell something was wrong, but I didn't know what. We walked into my office, and she closed the door behind her. "I know you've been working tirelessly to turn this company around, and you've done an incredible job," she said, her voice calm but serious. "But there's a concern I need to address. We're growing faster than we can keep up with." I sat down in my chair, taking a deep breath. I knew this was coming. We had been growing at an exponential rate, and with that came challenges that I hadn't fully anticipated. "What do you suggest?" I asked. "I think it's time we expand even further," she replied. "We need to think about scaling up in a way that will ensure we can continue this growth without losing the quality that's gotten us here." I knew she was right. The question wasn't whether we could expand. It was how, and how quickly. Over the next few weeks, we started putting together a new strategy to tackle the issue of expansion. We brought in experts, held brainstorming sessions, and analyzed every aspect of the company. It was all hands on deck, and I couldn't afford to let up. We were on the verge of something huge, and I couldn't afford to make the wrong move. Then, one afternoon, David called me. I hadn't heard from him much since our last conversation, and I wasn't sure what to expect. "Sophia," he said, his voice tight, "I'm in trouble." I paused, surprised. "What do you mean?" "The company I've been working for, they're going under," he explained. "I don't know what to do. They're laying off employees, and I don't have a backup plan." I listened, my mind racing. This was the moment when everything I had done would be tested. I didn't want to be the person who swooped in and saved him, not after everything that had happened. But I couldn't help feeling a sense of responsibility. I had built something from nothing. And maybe, just maybe, I could help him too. "Come to the office," I said. "Let's talk." Later that afternoon, David walked into my office. His face was pale, his shoulders slumped. He looked defeated. I couldn't remember the last time I saw him like this. "I don't know what to do," he said. "I thought I had it all figured out, but now everything's falling apart." I took a deep breath and looked at him. This wasn't the same man who had dismissed me all those years ago. This was someone who needed help, someone who was willing to admit he couldn't do it alone. "We'll figure it out," I said firmly. "But you need to understand something, David. I'm not going to save you. I'm going to show you how to save yourself." It wasn't an easy conversation. It never is when you're faced with someone you love, someone you've known your entire life, and realize that they need your help. But this was different. I wasn't doing it for him. I was doing it for me, for the person I had become. And that was the difference. We spent the next few weeks working together. I didn't just help him with his company. I helped him see what I had learned. That success isn't just about winning. It's about learning, growing, and understanding that sometimes the only way to get through tough times is to face them head on. By the time we were done, David was standing on his own 2 feet again. And for the first time in years, I saw him look at me with something more than just skepticism. He looked at me with respect. And that, more than anything, felt like the true victory. Months passed, and the company was now a well-oiled machine. I had done what I set out to do. I had turned it into a thriving, successful business. But something about the way the world was shifting made me uneasy. My brother David was in a better place now, running his company independently, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the calm before another storm. The success of the company was now undeniable, but with that success came more responsibility. I knew I had made the right choices, but the pressure never really lifted. I was now the person people turned to, the one they looked up to, and somehow, it felt heavier than I had imagined. It wasn't that I didn't want to be in this position. It was just that every time I succeeded, there were new challenges to face, new obstacles to overcome. One evening, as I walked through the office, I saw the faces of the people who had been with me from the very beginning. They were proud of what we had built, but there was a quiet energy in the air that I couldn't quite place. Something was changing, but I wasn't sure what it was. That night, I sat at my desk, going through emails and reports when a message from David popped up on my screen. It was unexpected, and for a moment, I wasn't sure what it would say. We hadn't really spoken much since our last big conversation. The email simply read, "Can we talk?" I paused, unsure of what to expect. It wasn't like him to reach out unless there was something serious. A sense of unease washed over me as I hit reply. "Sure, when?" I typed, hoping for clarity. Minutes later, he called. I picked up the phone, and his voice sounded different. It wasn't the confident, almost cocky tone I was used to hearing. This time, he sounded tired, worn down. "Sophia," he said, "I've been thinking a lot about everything." I waited, the silence between us thick. "What's going on, David?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He took a deep breath, and I could hear him shifting in his chair on the other end. "I've been watching you from the sidelines, and I see what you've done," he said quietly. "You've built something amazing, and I don't think I really got it before. I've been thinking about how I treated you all those years, and I was wrong." I felt a lump form in my throat. Hearing him admit that was something I never thought would happen. I had spent so many years longing for his approval, but now, in this moment, I realized that I didn't need it. "You don't have to apologize, David," I said, my voice steady. "We've both been on our own journeys. I've learned a lot, and I think you have too." There was a long pause before he spoke again. "I'm proud of you, Sophia. More than I can say." His words hung in the air between us, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a shift in our relationship. It wasn't the kind of closure I had imagined, but it was the kind I needed. We didn't need to fix everything, to go back to the way things were. What mattered was that we both understood each other now, that we had both grown. I hung up the phone that night feeling a sense of peace. The weight of years of competition and resentment had finally lifted. I had worked hard to get to this point, but what made it all worthwhile wasn't the success, the money, or the recognition. It was knowing that I had built something that mattered, something that was bigger than any of the struggles I had faced. I had built a legacy, and that was enough.